The Sermon on the Mount. Well, welcome to you. What I thought I'd do is give a personal interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount. And not only is it a personal interpretation, but it's a reinterpretation. I keep reinterpreting it, But this is a personal reinterpretation based on my Kejawen beliefs. Now, this is part of a new section to the magic of Java called The Real Magic of Java. In this new section, I'm going to focus on real people performing what they believe to be real magic in Java. I'll attempt to explain some of the elements of this Javanese magic, particularly what I describe as the Kejawen elements. However, I need to warn you that inevitably my explanations will be partial. Maybe sometimes some elements of what I say will be incorrect, for which I profusely apologise. But this reflects the oral tradition of magic in Java, the mystery, and at times, I have to admit, subterfuge surrounding the practice of magic in Java. Please accept my apologies, but I do hope you enjoy this new section. Now, I was going to begin this by explaining how I'd grown up in the liberal Anglo-Catholic tradition, and that the Sermon of the Mount had always been fundamental to my beliefs, even though I lost my way many times. But I realised that it dates back even further than that, because I grew up in Shropshire, originally in Shrewsbury and always in and around Shrewsbury. And one of the main roads leading out of Shrewsbury is called the Mount. And now I think about it, as a child in Sunday school, when I was taught the Sermon on the Mount, I always believed it was referring to that road in Shrewsbury. And maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe I should reflect on that a little bit more. Now, the Sermon on the Mount has always fundamentally influenced me, but I think it also, well, I know it did, influence the English Romantics. And to me, the English Romantics have always been so important, but they always seem to intertwine with the Sermon on the Mount. Of course, since moving to Indonesia, I found my faith again in Islam. But I find the Sermon on the Mount very important to me once more. And I'd argue, especially in these troubled times. Now, Jesus, or Isa, as we Muslims call him, is an important prophet within Islam. That might come as a surprise to some of you, but he is an important prophet. We do see him as a prophet, we don't deify him, but, that's, to be honest, I couldn't be bothered arguing with that sort of thing. But also what will probably surprise you is the Bible, along with the Book of Psalms, are holy books to us. As interestingly is the Torah, which Jesus says that he's here to fulfill in the Sermon on the Mount. Now, something that you will hear Muslims say, and I think there's a degree of truth in it, and that is they will say that God or Allah gave the Torah to the Jews and gave them Abraham, and they ignored what he was saying. So they then sent Isa, Jesus, and again, the Christians, to a degree, turned their back on what Jesus was saying. And I think at the heart of that is the Sermon on the Mount, because no more so than any of Jesus' teachings, the Sermon on the Mount is the one that I think Christians have struggled the most to implement. So then he claimed that, then the claim is that he then sent Muhammad, and Muhammad came and he said, right, you've not understood what I was saying through Ibrahim, you've not understood what I was saying through Isa, so now we're going to make it simple. You know, you pray 5 times a day, etc., etc. I think that's just a story, but it does illustrate the importance of Judaism and Christianity to us Muslims. Now, whenever I express views, such views, I seem to offend evangelical Christians, especially when they find out that I celebrate the life of Jesus. And they attempt to trip me into theological arguments, trip me up in theological arguments. And again, you know, I have to say, I don't care. You know, I don't care about these theological arguments that so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that. And then you know that it's getting really, really silly when they start quoting from the Bible or Al-Quran, because it's always selectively quoting and it's always, you know, somewhat misunderstood and, you know, just to prove their points. I mean, I suppose, let's be clear about this. What I'm going to do now is my interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount. And I know it is. It's my interpretation. It's not somebody else's. And it's about the path that I've chosen. It's my path. Now, I don't put people down for being on other paths. You know, this is my path. It's the path I've chosen. It's the path that suits me. It may change, you know, or I may stray from it and find another path. But it doesn't matter. None of these things matter. And I think that's the point. Of course, as a Kejawen, there's no conflict in holding these beliefs. You know, we don't, you know, we embrace all religions, you know, including what the evangelists believe of polytheistic religions. But they're not. They're not. Most religions, almost all religions, are really monotheistic. It's just a misunderstanding. Well, it's not even a misunderstanding. It's wanting to have a go at other people's religions, isn't it, frankly? But as a result of being Kejawen, I've actually discovered some more mystical interpretations to the Sermon on the Mount. And I just feel now is the time to share them with you. So that's what I'm doing. Ask, seek, knock. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And the one who knocks, the door will be opened. So if we raise our vibrations, then eventually we will receive God's blessing in the form of light, the light of love and bliss. In Islam, we say God forgives everything. So if we truly repent and seek to know God, then he will give us his blessing. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him stone? Or if he asks for fish, will give him a steak? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much will your Father in heaven give gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would them do to you. This sums up the law of the prophets. Do unto others what you would have them do to you. This seems to be central to the Sermon on the Mount. Probably the most profound statement within it, and the thing that's had the greatest influence on me. It's saying that we should treat all, even our enemies, with the love of bliss and light. And now I've argued, and indeed I think the Sermon on the Mount argues, that there's no point in trying to change psychopaths and narcissists because they've given up their free will. But we're all reminded to treat all, by being guided by the light, treat all with love and bliss. So quite a profound statement indeed. The narrow and wide gates, enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. To me, this recognises the powerful hegemony that I've described, that it's easier to give up our free will to the will of others and to become the automaton that I describe. But the path which leads to the light is a more difficult path to follow. So this really is what my daily jihad is about. I recognise that if you like, there is good and evil. As I say, I see it as light and darkness within us all. But we must strive to find our light. We must strive to shine a light on our own darknesses. And this is a struggle. That's why the name jihad means struggle. So it is a struggle. No one said it was going to be easy. It's far easier to take the easy road. But Jesus is asking us to take the more difficult route. True and false prophets. Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognise them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit you will recognise them. Now, I believe this to confirm my views of Milton Satan, the Heathcliff, if you like. Now, I've already argued that I'm not 100% sure there's a real Satan. I see it more as a metaphor. But the temptation to give up our free will is so seductive. So the temptation to give in to the will of others and to become these automata that I speak of is so pervasive, so seductive and strong. And again, I guess this is what the Ten Commandments is about, isn't it? The Ten Commandments really does give us some sort of a measure of how we should behave. As I've argued about the Ten Commandments, that if we understand the light, then they really don't matter. But if we're unsure, look back at the Ten Commandments. Again, it seems to suggest that I call automata cannot be changed. But more than this, we cannot do something which is bad, believing that it's a route to good, i.e. the common good. So throughout my life, many times, when I've realised that this, I suppose you could call it a conspiracy, some sort of collusion is going on, I've been taken to one side and it's been explained to me that I'm a bit naive, that what I see as being a bad act is actually being done for the good of others. It's if you like, some sort of a trick. And I think that's what this is about, that we shouldn't fall for this. It's very seductive to think we've been let in on something so special, something so complicated, that we do something that in our hearts we know is bad, in our hearts we know is wrong, but we're told that it's being done for good. Now, I have an illustration of this. You can take it or leave it. It's just my personal opinion. But there's something about digital money that I find really distressing. I don't think for 1 minute that even Bitcoin has been designed to do what it's claimed it does. I can see something much darker behind it, that we're being tricked. Now, as I say, that's only my view. You can take it or leave it. But it's a very good illustration of the point that I'm trying to make here. True and false disciples. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who do the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? In your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles. Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Another very, very important verse, which warns us against religion for material purpose. And let's face it, isn't so much of religion used in this way? I mean, I've said it before, but psychopaths and narcissists are very attracted to religion because it holds some power. And they use a religion not in the name of God, but in the name of money. The wise and foolish builders. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who builds his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. Isn't this about the materialist hegemony that I speak of? That it's a house built on sand. That everything we know and everything we believe is actually a Tower of Babel. That we can use materialism and greed ultimately for good. Maybe it also warns us that the hegemony actually is a Tower of Babel. That, you know, we're building on something that is unsustainable. And I believe that's what society is now, something that is highly unsustainable. And history proves it, you know, every time the rich have got so greedy that instead of attempting to make the economy bigger, they see their route to wealth as being taken from the poor. And it feels to me like that is happening right now. And it is a Tower of Babel. I heard only yesterday, I heard a story about a woman. And she was asked when her husband died to bury him with his money. And when he did die, she placed a small box in the coffin. And people saw her doing it and they said, oh, did you put his money in there? And she explained, well, yes, she had. But the box was actually too small. So she wrote him a cheque. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teachings, because he taught as one who had authority, and not as their teachers of the law. This is the real power of the Sermon on the Mount, isn't it? Cutting through the overpowering hegemony that I speak of. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed this. Because these are real events, I can't say how regularly I'm going to be adding to this subsection. Because I don't know how often they're going to occur. But I would imagine that they'll be at least every couple of months, maybe monthly. Now, if you'd like to know when that's going to be, please subscribe and hit the button, and you'll get information on when new ones are released. I'd love you to make comments and ask questions, and if you do, I'll attempt to answer them. as honestly as I can. I promise you that there's no attempt on this channel or this part of this channel of me. There'll be no attempt by me at any type of subterfuge. I'll try to be as honest and open as I possibly can be. Inevitably, there will be some of you who disagree with my interpretation, and we can agree to disagree. But what you're seeing is real stuff here. What I'd love you to do, if you enjoyed this, is look at my other sections. Particularly, I've written novels about magic in Java, and they contain much more information in them, especially me trying to understand the theories of magic, the psychology of it, and I try and intersperse them with a sort of spiritual dimension. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and God bless you.